This time on Engine Masters, it is the 1,000 horsepower Muffler Showdown! You gotta do that when you get a new muffler. It's kind of a rule. Welcome to the episode I like to call Another Excuse to Run My Big Block Chevy. I love this thing. It's 555 cubic inches. It's got an airflow research cylinder head, a nasty comp solid roller cam, an 871 supercharger from the blower shop, and we're running it on E85 with QFT carburetors. Now, on a prior episode, you saw us making up to 1,500 horsepower on nitrous with this thing. Right now, we have got it detuned to make about 1,050 horsepower. Why? Because I think there's a lot of you out there these days that have got 1,000 horsepower on your ProCharger motor or your Roots blown deal or your nitrous and blown deal or even your turbo, and you want to know what kind of exhaust system can you put on your engine and not give up a whole lot of Wheaties. And that's what we're here to find out. These are the mufflers I chose to test, and let me tell you why. I went to summitracing.com and I was looking for the muffler that would actually attenuate sound. There's a lot of race bullets that you can buy, little tiny mufflers that are really only just for decoration for racing where they say you have to have a muffler. No, I wanted something that would actually be quiet enough that maybe you could putt it around on the street or live with it on an event like Hot Rod Drag Week. That's why all of these mufflers are the larger oval style rather than little race bullets. Now, when I went shopping for a muffler that had a 4-inch in and a 4-inch out, I found out that really your options are limited as far as the muffler configuration. You can only get center in and center out on almost everything except for the Flowmaster, which you'll see I got side in and center out. There's a bunch of 4-inch mufflers that are bigger, like turbo mufflers for big diesel trucks, but those are gonna slaughter power. So these are the ones that I chose. In addition to all being oval, there's 3 of them that have a straight-through perforated design and 1 of them that's chambered. What you're gonna see here is the stuff I chose that I felt was most appropriate to actually fit in a muscle car with 1,000 horsepower, but there's other options out there, and of course a bunch of other brands. But these are gonna be representative, including the Hooker Maximum Flow. This is the cheapest muffler that we've got here. Current pricing at Summit Racing at the time that we shot this video for this deal is $89.75. It's the only unit here that's made in China. The rest of them are made in USA. It is aluminized steel construction, and it does have the straight-through perforated core. And I always say that the muffler that makes the most power is the one that you can see through. So that is a see-through Hooker Maximum Flow. Next up, we've got the MagnaFlow muffler. Now, this one is $166.51, but it is made in America. It does have stainless steel construction, and once again, it is that see-through core. No surprises there. Next, we're moving on to the Flowmaster. Now, this is different than all the other mufflers here because it is a fully aluminized steel welded muffler that is not straight through. It has got some welded in metal baffles in here, one straight across here that has a hole in it. It's got sort of a V-shaped one. This is the classic race muffler that started it all in the very earliest days of fastest street car racing. This one happens to be a Series 30. It also happens to be the largest of the mufflers that we're testing here. At Summit, this Flowmaster is $194.95. Now, here's a very serious thing. This muffler, the Flowmaster, can be used as a skid plate. The reason I say this is a real thing is that if your car is really low, all pro-streeted out, and you're gonna be dragging it over driveways and speed bumps, legitimately, the construction of the Flowmaster is going to survive longer than any of the rest of these, so that is a consideration. Lastly, our most expensive muffler in the lineup, the Borla, at $218.99. It is all stainless steel construction, once again, straight through perforated design. Now let's talk about size. It's gonna be tough to fit these underneath the car, so this is a consideration. The lowest one, the most squatty this way, is definitely the Borla. Both the Borla and the MagnaFlow are about the same width. The super tanker here is clearly the Flowmaster, and the mid-range one is going to be the Hooker. Now, if you're building a race car, I figure weight is really important to you, and exhaust systems are heavy, so let's go over the weight of each one of these. The lightest muffler is the Borla at 9.08 pounds. Next up, the MagnaFlow is 10.42 pounds. The Hooker maximum flow, 11.84 pounds. And the super tanker of a big old Flowmaster muffler is actually 17.34 pounds. So we're gonna put the big block in there. We're gonna run it with open headers. Then we're gonna run it with 9 feet of exhaust piping and no mufflers at all, so we can see what that does. Then we're gonna start running through the mufflers from the shortest to the longest. And at the end, I'm also gonna look at running 4 mufflers at the same time on the engine, because we're also looking for quiet. And at every stage, we'll be checking these things with a decibel meter. So you're gonna get a lot of meat in this episode, including the 1,000 horsepower big block. All right, let's go. Here's the first opinion I want from you guys, which is this harder on mufflers because it's a blown engine or easier because it's a blown engine? In other words, is the forced evacuation make it easier, or does the extra volume make it harder?
I'll take the first crack at that.
Okay.
I don't think it makes any difference whatsoever.
1,000 horse is 1,000 horse, doesn't matter.
Right.
Even though the engine's actually making more than 1,000 horsepower.
Ooh, good point, Freiberger. Oh, you were holding that up your sleeve.
Right?
Yeah, you got me.
Yep. How about you?
I don't know, on that train of thought, I suppose it could be 1,200 and 1,200. I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
I think your question was, does it matter because we're supposedly forcing the air out the exhaust instead of using it to help scavenge?
Right.
And, you know, look, I gotta say, mufflers are not my deal. I got nothing.
Don't know. Well, my comment on it's making more than 1,000 horsepower is obviously to turn the blower is gonna take 150 on this thing.
Yeah.
Maybe more,
Maybe
200.
more.
And so essentially we're testing 1,200 horsepower mufflers.
Exactly.
And actually, we don't know what the tune-up is right now. This thing actually might make 1,030 or 40.
Yeah.
So we're gonna run the thing on baseline open header. But here's kind of my thought process. The first thing I want to do is run a big length of tubing with no muffler on it whatsoever,
okay,
so that we can just know what that variable is. And then let's just blast through the mufflers and then look at all of the data at the same time, see what we get. Oh, I'm also going to do the dB meter so we can see what the peak is at wide open.
Okay.
Okay, let's go. Okay, here's our baseline with open headers. It made 1,063.2 horsepower. That makes me happy. Also, 868.7 pound-feet of torque. The best thing about this is that we nailed a power number that I think will let us also make 1,000 horsepower once we start killing power with mufflers.
It was pretty easy, really. I mean, we just took a stab at a couple pulleys, changed them, and just changed it from 1,300 or whatever it used to make in some configuration to boom, here's 1,050 or 60.
Yeah, we wanted to kill a few hundred horsepower out of it so that it would actually survive this test. What is the actual drive ratio on it right now?
It's actually 2% over. It's 51 on the bottom, 50 on the top, so it's not much overdrive. That's a good blower.
2%.
Yeah.
Wow, that's actually really good.
Yeah.
What kind of boost is it making? I think people would want to know.
It's not much. I've run this thing before when it was only making a couple.
Oh, yeah. This is dinky boost. I mean, at peak power, it's making 5.8 pounds of boost.
Wow, that's nothing.
That's nothing. You know what? That's a pump gas motor. We're running it on an E85, but that would run on 91.
You know, I think it might, except for no intercooler.
Yeah, it would
with
definitely
an intercooler would, but
be more of a risk.
with E85 in it, it's got a built-in intercooler.
It's a total breeze. Okay, we can move on immediately. I just want to put straight pipe with no muffler whatsoever and keep that length of pipe throughout the entire test so that we're not testing like exhaust system length, but just the muffler itself.
How long?
I've got 4-foot stick, so I guess it's going to end up like 8.
4 or 8 or what?
Yeah, whatever the adapters are and everything. Okay, so let's go to straight pipe.
Do it.
This next run is going to be with 8 feet of straight pipe. Pretty cool.
Yeah,
is also 113 decibels.
What was it before?
113.
Yeah.
I mean, it's open exhaust.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's not quieter for moving it all the way to the back of the room, but obviously not. Now we're into something I don't think I've ever done before, which is a complete length exhaust system with no mufflers, and it made 1,067.1 horsepower, 868 pound-feet, but the real question is, how does it compare to open header? Basically, it made exactly the same power, no difference at all between regular open header with an 18-inch collector extension or a 9-foot collector extension.
It surprises me, it really does.
We might see something different here if it had like an over the axle and a turnout and some bends in it, but for perfectly straight pipe, it doesn't seem to care.
No, it doesn't.
All right, so the next thing I think we should do is throw the mufflers in the system and just rip through them.
Okay.
We're gonna go and test them as fast as we can right in a row, because I think they're all gonna be real similar and we don't want the weather to change and,
I think it's
add
good
any
to test back
variables.
to back.
I also think that we need to stick with keeping that overall length of the exhaust the same. I mean, it didn't seem to matter, but I'd like to eliminate every variable.
Yeah, it's a good point. You just don't want to add another variable that you have to question after the fact.
Yeah, so I guess we
good stuff.
start with the shortest muffler and move to the longest so that we can
Keep cutting?
so I don't want to cut the most and then have to add. Yeah, we'll just keep on cutting. Okay, cool. I think first up muffler is going to be the shortest one, which is the Hooker maximum flow.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, here we go.
Tape measure.
Now we're ready to go with mufflers. The very first one is going to be the Hooker maximum flow. $107. Our first muffler was the Hooker. Now we're going into the MagnaFlow. So the dB on that one was 108 at wide open versus 107. It's 1 decibel. Now the very last of our straight-through mufflers, the Borla. The last set of mufflers we're going to test here are the Flowmasters, the only ones that you can't see through and the only ones with offset in and out. $103, they're quieter. Results with the Hooker mufflers, 874.6 pound-feet of torque and 1,070.2 horsepower. Survey says MagnaFlow mufflers make 875.4 pound-feet of torque and 1,063.6 horsepower, still at 7,000 RPM. Final results with the Borla muffler, 868.7 pound-feet of torque, 1,064.5 horsepower. Our final player is the Flowmaster, which just made 868.6 pound-feet of torque and 1,056.7 horsepower. And now it's going to get good because we're going to compare the graphs of all these different mufflers. First, let's call up the graph for straight pipe. So on this deal, we're looking at 868 pound-feet of torque and 1,067.1 horsepower just with 9 feet of straight pipe on it. So you want to compare the mufflers in the order that we tested them?
Sure.
Okay, so first up is going to be the Hooker. Interesting. So the Hooker is in red and the straight pipe is in black. The Hooker actually made more power.
A little bit.
Surprise.
How's that possible?
I don't know, but it is, so it's just better.
What if the case is big enough that the engine saw that as the end of the length of the pipe for the pressure wave, and it actually shortened up the whole exhaust system? That might be why it did that.
Or maybe it's acting like an accumulator.
Maybe we have no idea what we're talking about. For whatever reason, the Hooker muffler actually made more power than straight pipe. That is interesting. And not just at peak, we're talking everywhere above 5,100 RPM.
Yeah. Kind of through the middle.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
By how much, though? What's the difference right here at, say, 6,000?
10.
Pretty much
9.
9. Yeah. Surprising. So let's now look at the Hooker as our standard and compare that with the next one, which is the MagnaFlow. Ooh, even more interesting. Hooker in black, MagnaFlow in red. Once again, the hooker just comes out on top.
Yeah.
How?
I attribute it to the case volume.
Maybe it is the case volume.
It's got a little more case volume than the MagnaFlow.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what my theory was, which was that it's so big that it's diffusing the pressure wave or reducing the pressure or reducing the speed of the flow and somehow creating the pressure wave that the engine likes.
We're dealing with apples and oranges because the case volume is an actual indisputable characteristic of that muffler.
Right.
Whereas pressure wave reverberation and those kinds of factors, that's more getting into the theoretical aspects. So.
Well, it's a feature versus a benefit. The feature is that the case volume is bigger. The benefit, we don't know.
Why?
Except for that it makes more power. So the bottom line here is we don't have a crystal clear answer, but once again, the hooker muffler comes on top as compared with the MagnaFlow. Just a little bit, but it wins. So now let's compare the hooker to the Borla. The Borla being the smallest case volume of anything that we've tested. It's the smallest muffler.
Well, we'll see if the trend continues here.
Black line there is the hooker. Here comes the Borla in red, and again, the hooker comes out on top. I'm surprised. I thought they would all be identical because they're all just so straight through, but it has to have something to do with that case volume.
Yeah, they're actually pretty close in all fairness. But
well, they are very, very close, but the hooker's better, and in this case, at every single point in the curve. And by the way, we tested these back to back to back. It's not like there's a weather change or a difference in the coolant temperature or the temperature in the room, nothing.
And we also compensated for the slight difference in case length by adjusting the pipe length so that the system length is exactly the same each time.
This is as fair as we can possibly be, and the hooker's still on top. So now we have to look at the hooker versus the Flowmaster, with the largest case volume, I might add.
The straight-through muffler, you would think, would have an advantage over a chambered muffler.
Here comes the Flowmaster. Oh! Flowmaster in red, hooker muffler in black. That is amazing. So the bottom line conclusion is the cheapest muffler in the test was the one that made the most power.
It's not stainless steel.
Right.
Maybe that's part of the cost.
It's made in China.
Okay.
All the others are made in America.
Okay. But it still won.
But it still made the most power. That's crazy. So here's, I guess, the question is, do you guys feel that this result would be similar on a naturally aspirated engine or a different combination? Or do you feel that we're just seeing an anomaly based on this particular engine?
I think at this, my opinion is this power level, when you've got a 4-inch muffler and that sort of size case, I think it does the same thing on an NA engine. I don't think it affects it much.
Yeah, it's just, well, do you agree that this is making more airflow than an NA engine would at the same power level because it is driving the supercharger?
Because it's really making 1,250 horsepower.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So moving air is moving air. This is moving a lot of air. So it arguably on an NA, like, you know, my NA big block that makes 1,000, you're going to see the same results or maybe less of a difference between the two because there's less flow demand.
Yeah, but I agree with you, Steve. I think it's just the results are the results. It's not some kind of anomaly or testing variation. That's what happened. That's what they did.
I think it's just the case size and that diameter hole. It just accommodates 1,000 horsepower really well or 1,200 horsepower really well. I have never tested mufflers this big on this kind of power level, so it's a real eye-opener for me how good they can be.
It's really not that bad. It really isn't. So let's look at our, I was going to say best to worst, but that's what's on the screen right here. The Flowmaster came out on the bottom, and the hooker maximum flow muffler came out on top.
Well, you basically look at these numbers compared to the open header.
It's better.
Better, yeah. I mean, so it actually takes that shriek off the thing. It's not quite as loud, and it makes a little bit more power.
So let's talk about that. The decibel rating for all of these mufflers. At idle, basically, when it was open, whether it had the 9 feet of pipe on it or not, it was 79 or 80 decibels. All of the straight-through mufflers, the hooker, the MagnaFlow, the Borla, they cut it down to 73 or 74. The Flowmaster, also 74. Now, I'm curious about that data because To me, it sounded in the room like the Flowmaster was quieter.
It sounded quieter to me as well.
Yeah, so at idle, maybe the dB meter was not as sensitive to the ambient in the room and everything, but at wide open throttle, I think this is legit. With no mufflers at all, 113 decibels. The Hooker, the MagnaFlow, the Borla, all between 107 and 109.
Okay.
All of a sudden, the Flowmaster goes to 103.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the Flowmaster wins at actual sound attenuation. And a lot of people, of course, think that the Flowmaster's got that cool Flowmaster sound, so there's that.
Well, and you know, when you're making 1,070 horsepower, if it makes 1,060 and is quiet and you can drive it.
Yeah, yeah, what difference does it make? So that's the data on decibels.
Yeah, good stuff.
Can we just look at all of them together on the screen? Basically, I want to look at all the mufflers together at the same time on the graph to show you that really they're all pretty close. I don't think you can make a mistake with any of these, although it's hard to argue that the cheapest muffler made the most power. It's kind of awesome. Okay, so this is just 6,000 to 7,000 RPM. Green is the Hooker, clearly on top. Red is the Flowmaster, so it was the worst. Everything else falls right in between the two. What's the range that we're looking at there from best to worst? From 1,056 to 1,070 horsepower. So again, as a percentage of total power in the engine, it's not that significant.
1%?
Yeah, 1%.
Yeah.
But for bragging rights,
yeah,
the Hooker wins. Okay, you know what I want to do next, because this is something I've seen on a lot of the fastest streetcar stuff from Drag Week and everything, is 4 mufflers in the same system. A lot of guys do that to cut the sound down. So I want to take our 2 best mufflers, so the Hookers and the MagnaFlows together in the same exhaust system and see what happens. Now we're ready to go with the quad mufflers. We got the MagnaFlow right on the header and the Hookers out back.
At wide open, it seemed kind of loud to me.
103, basically the same as the Flowmaster.
Okay.
Yeah, but quieter than just a single set of mufflers.
Well, it'd be interesting if the Flowmasters made the same power or less than 2 of the straight-through mufflers with the same sound quality.
That will be really good.
Yeah.
I want to see that. That was really cool.
really quiet.
And at the high end on the dB, it did the same as the Flowmaster, 103.
Okay.
But the tone is mellower somehow.
Really soft.
It's not shredding, so it might be the same, you know, sound pressure. But didn't you think it sounded cooler?
Yeah, I thought so too. I could hear more of the blower as it was pulling and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So how about the power? So interesting, our quad muffler setup made 1,066.3 horsepower and 860.7 pound-feet of torque. So pretty good. I guess the big question I've got is, let's compare it to the Flowmaster, because it's the same sound pressure as the Flowmaster. So do you make more power with 2 straight-throughs at the same sound level, or do you make more power with the Flowmaster?
I would give the dual muffler the advantage here.
I think probably. Oh, interesting. So the black line here is our quad muffler setup, and the red line is the Flowmaster.
It's interesting what it did to the curve.
Yeah, actually the Flowmaster is way better below 6,000 RPM, and then the quad muffler picks up on top a little bit. I think when the flow demand gets higher, the blockages in the Flowmaster become more of a problem.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the quad muffler versus our best dual straight-through setup.
Hooker, okay. So now we're gonna look at quad muffler versus our best muffler, the Hooker. So Hooker in red, quad muffler in black. Clearly 4 mufflers is a greater restriction and does not make as much power, and obviously is heavier and harder to package.
But quieter.
So, but significantly quieter to my ear. So you really, your decision is, do you want to make more power, or do you want to be a little quieter and carry more weight and have a bigger packaging problem? So I know you guys are probably sick of doing all my exhaust tests. I mean, look back at what we've done. X pipe, H pipe, 2.5 versus, 3-inch, on and on, blower headers, all this stuff. I have more questions than ever. I'm ready to do more. I seriously want to test more exhaust stuff, especially knowing what we know with this stuff. I want to try a bell mouth on the end of an exhaust tip.
Yeah.
Because we know that flow isn't that good with a straight cut.
Ooh.
So what happens if it was bell mouthed?
Maybe we can do a whole exhaust tip extravaganza and see if it does anything.
Exhaust tips, do they make power? That's a good idea, Dulcich. And if we do it, guess what? You will see it on a future episode of Engine Masters. The Borla being, and that's the Borla muffler. And that's the Borla muffler. I can't say muffler all of a sudden.
It's a tongue twister.
It's a tongue twister, the Borla muffler. Our final player is the Flow Master, which just made.
Oh man, I can't maintain my composure. Oh. Okay.
Which one do you want? 500 horsepower or 500 horsepower? I promise you there's a difference, as you're gonna see this time on Engine Masters. We've done a number of engine-to-engine, head-to-head comparisons on Engine Masters, but each time we've sort of built the engine similarly. When you do same displacement, same camshaft, cylinder heads that flow about the same carburetor, same intake, same headers, they pretty much make the same power curve. This time we're doing something a little bit different. We have two engines that are wildly different from each other, but they both make 500 horsepower. What could possibly be different about the rest of these engines? Well, virtually everything mechanically and a lot about the power curve. So let me tell you about what we're gonna do. We have a small block Chevy that measures 372 cubic inches, and we have a big block Chevy at 454 cubic inches. Now, let me tell you from top to bottom what makes these similar and what makes them different. Obviously, they're both Chevrolets, but they're two completely different engine families that share very, very little. Up top, we both have Holley carburetors, a 750 on the small block and 850 on the big block. The intake manifolds are the same manufacturer and design. They're both Performer RPM air gaps, this one on the small block, and of course the same thing on the big block. Now's when things really start to diverge. In the cylinder head department over on the big block, we've got a GM Performance Parts 290cc oval port, which would be considered a very average cylinder head for the displacement. It's not super trick. But over here on the small block, we've got the Airflow Research 195s, which would be considered an above average cylinder head for this small block. Looking at the compression ratio on both of these, the small block is tickling the underside of 11:1. It's 10.8 to 10.9:1 compression. On the other end of the spectrum, the big block is about 8.5:1. This will probably run on 87 octane, though we'll run them here on 91. Looking at the bottom end, the small block is sort of an unusual combination of bore and stroke. It's 372 cubic inches. It's a 4 1/8 inch bore and a 3.48 inch stroke. Putting it in production terms, it's like using a Chevy 350 crankshaft in a Chevy 400 block. It's a Dart aftermarket block, whereas over here on the 454, we're talking about a stock block, stock bore and stroke. 4 1/4 on the bore and 4 inches on the stroke. The camshaft in both of these is wildly different. On the small block, we have a hydraulic roller cam. The duration at 50 is 242 and 248. It's a Comp Cams off-the-shelf unit. There's also a Comp Cams cam in the big block, but it's a flat tappet, meaning much cheaper, much lower performance typically, and the duration at 50 is 230, 236, so it's a whole lot smaller. So what you're looking at in the small block is a fairly advanced street strip engine, some really good parts in it, and this particular engine has 1,000,000 laps at Westech. They've used it for probably 10,000 dyno pulls and it's never been rebuilt. That Dart short block is really good. Over here with the big block, it is a much more average engine. It's much lower buck, lower compression, less camshaft, you know, no trick displacement. It's just off the shelf 454. So the question is, if both of these make 500 horsepower, which one would you choose? We're gonna look at that in depth in this episode. And we're gonna do it with 2 simple dyno pulls. First, we're gonna run the small block, then we're gonna run the big block, and then we're gonna have a conversation with the 2 Steves with us all shooting out why you would choose the small block versus why you would choose the big block. Okay, Steve, why don't we save time? We won't bother running the engine. You can just draw the curves from memory. I figure you've seen it so many times.
2,000, 3,000 times now.
Yeah, that engine's like an anvil, man.
No, it absolutely has been incredible. I mean, it's seen so many different tests, different style tests, camshafts and intake manifolds and cylinder heads and headers and collector. More stuff than I can remember.
And never been freshened up.
The oil's been changed. It's been maintained well, and that's truly about it. The pan's never been off of it since the day it was built. What, 12 years ago?
Yeah, well, Dulcich and I can break it just by being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't worry, Steve. You'll be going through it.
So I guess we just run this thing, tear it down, run the other one, so there's nothing to do but to do it.
Then I guess we need to do it.
Go ahead. Not quite 500 horsepower coming up.
Yeah, almost 500 horsepower.
Almost. There you go, kind of the normal power this engine makes with this intake manifold. Honestly, if we had a single plane on it, it bumps it up to 510.
Yeah.
Something like that. But right now we've got 497 horsepower, 3 shy of a magazine cover blurb.
That's right.
And then we've also got 463.9 pound-feet of torque.
I could go lap it once or twice and get the oil hot, and I'll bet it'll make 500.
Yeah, we can fool around a little bit, but I think that's not really going to be the point.
No.
The point is going to be the gross change in the curve that we'll see between these 2 500 horsepower engines or 497 horsepower engines.
What if they're the same?
Then that would be the oddest thing I ever saw.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would say it's very unlikely. You know.
Yeah.
If our big block makes 463 pound-feet of torque, I'm going to go throw it in the dumpster.
Okay.
Because it's obviously broken.
Yeah, sometimes we do these tests and we're taking a risk because we're not exactly sure what's going to happen. This time, I'm pretty sure we've got a good idea. Yeah, but let's go prove it. We got to unhang the small block and we're going to roll in our 454 big block. You know what, I'm thinking this might be the first time that we've ever changed a complete engine for an A/B test.
And we think they're both supposed to make 500.
They should. Actually, one thing I wanted to point out to the audience about what we're doing here is that, yeah, we're using Chevy engines again, but what you're about to see is a demonstration that really applies to anything. So you can take exactly what we're doing here and you can apply it to Chevy, Ford, Mopar, big and small LS engines, 4-bangers, anything. What they're doing here is actually a really good tech tip, which is draining the water out of the block. Most engines, maybe even all, have drain plugs that go into the water jackets on both sides of the V. You actually have to drain both sides because they don't share side to side, except for across the water pump and across the thermostat housing. And it's just way better to store an engine that way so you don't rot the inside of the coolant passages and so you don't spill like water and coolant everywhere. Test number 2, the 454 big block. Looks like that did what I was hoping it was going to do.
Pretty close.
Let's see. And there's our curve. Look at that.
That's a nice curve.
Power curve. This is really similar to what we saw with our small block as far as peak horsepower, 498.7 at 5,800 RPM. And then the torque is 544.3 at 4,000 RPM, a wee bit different than the small block. Just a little
bit, yeah.
Yeah, so let's look at the overlays. Two engines, pretty much 500 horsepower each, but what are the curves gonna look like? Yowza.
Whoa.
Black lines, big block. Red lines, small block. The only similarity here is peak horsepower. Otherwise, completely different characteristics on these engines, which is what I want to talk about. I actually have a scoring sheet.
Oh, really? I'm ready.
I do. What are your initial reactions?
Small block, more RPM, which I like.
You know where I'm at.
Big block
It's
Chevy.
a big block.
This much more
you
torque.
Can't make that up with RPM.
This is just absolutely comically more torque than the small block.
It's 100 pound-feet.
Yeah. No, it's completely dumb.
Yeah.
And so what's going to play into my discussion from this point on is the fact that both of these things you can go to a cruise night and go, oh, yeah, I got 500 horsepower. But it's going to behave completely differently, not only because of the power differences, but also because the RPM characteristics of each engine. I think we can definitely score for overall power. The big block wins, right?
Absolutely.
You like the small block because of RPM. We like the big block because of big, meaty power. Next, by engine builder standards, which one of these is a better combination? So this is where I want to start looking at specific output. Torque per cubic inch, horsepower per cubic inch. Obviously, the small block wins horsepower per cubic inch because they make the same power and it's a smaller engine. How about torque per cubic inch?
I'll go
Calculated. I think they're pretty close.
No way.
Nah, small blocks.
No way.
Small blocks got this.
So 544 pound-feet
Divided by
big
454.
block, divided by 454 is 1.198.
Okay.
The small block, what's the peak torque on it?
463.
463.7. So we will go 463.7 divided by 372 cubic inches, 1.246.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing there is that the big block is low compression.
Right.
Probably the head is not as good per the displacement as the small block is.
Well, part of that, though, for me, says that it's going to last longer. It doesn't have as much compression. It doesn't
I'm getting
have the
there.
engine speed.
I'm talking by engine builder standards. Which one would you look at and go, yeah, that thing's pretty sweet. You did a good job. I would say the small block. The big block is not as impressive for what it is.
No, it's not as impressive. Except for how much power it makes.
I guess the problem with that, though, is like, what's your goal?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like these engines are basically two different goals.
Yes.
So, So what's your vote, big block or small block?
Well, mine's still big block.
Unquestionably, the small block, it's got way better specific output.
I say small block also, so it's going to win that. All right, Steve, I'm going to let you judge this one. What's the better magazine blurb?
Oh, it's small block again.
So the small block
hands
wins.
down, it's getting every category.
500 horsepower small block, way better than 500 horsepower big block.
Well, wouldn't you agree?
Price. This is a tough one. So I price some things out. A big block Edelbrock RPM intake manifold is way more expensive than a small block.
Okay.
Even the Edelbrock oval port heads, I know these are GM, but I priced the Edelbrock oval port, which is similar.
Right.
They're basically $2,000 a set, and it's a couple $100 cheaper for the Airflow Research 195s that are on the small block. The Dart short block that's on the small blocks, $5,500 or something in that neighborhood. Whereas I would argue this, you could do this same power package on the big block with a junkyard short block.
Yeah, that's for a $500 short block and a freshen up.
Exactly. So overall price, I'm going to throw it to the big block. What's your opinion?
Oh, yeah, if you're slumming it, I mean, it's your only alternative. You can't afford that small block.
Right.
You'd have to get the big block.
So we all agree that the big block wins on price? Okay, here's an interesting one. Looking at these two power curves, what is the difference in performance in the car? And this comes down to a lot, because the question is, if you have 500 horsepower, does it run the same ET in the quarter mile if you've got the rest of the car tuned to the torque curve? Like, for example, you would have a 373 gear to run 115 miles an hour with this big block. You'd have a 489 gear to run the same mile an hour with the small block. So which one's quicker at that point?
My sense is the big block's still going to be faster. There's way too much torque to get the mass moving. I mean, unless you can run your car in a 200 RPM range, you have to take into account the rest of the curve, and the big block's huge in the rest of the curve.
And you can't gear the big block lower or it will run out of RPM because as we see right here where it takes a nosedive, it's done at 6,000.
Well, you have an extra 1,000 plus RPM with the small block. You can gear it a lot lower and you're gonna get most of that extra torque back at the rear wheels in first gear.
Ain't happening. Anytime you change gears, it's losing 1,500 RPM, whether it's a power glide or you've got to make a gear change and it's going to drop in RPM.
Oh, shit.
If you run it 700 over, it falls 700 under. So you've got this portion of the curve. The big block always falls back into the meat of it. It's got way more power at the gear change, and it's going to pull in the next gear better.
I thought you meant rear end gear change. You're talking about transmission
I'm talking about
gear
transmission
change.
gear
I meant rear end. I was talking about rear end.
Oh, I
gears,
understand,
so-
but I'm just saying if you're drag racing it, you've got to change gears. You don't have a 1-speed in your car.
And you change gears more often with a deeper gear.
Yeah.
It's like instead of a power glide, you might end up needing a 4-speed or a turbo 400 or whatever.
But even if they both had power glides in them, this has more meat at the gear change.
I would say that's undeterminable. I mean, we'll
Well,
probably
we're
make
bench
it a tie because I would say small block in a light car with a manual transmission and a really deep gear. You'd have to really work pretty hard to beat it with that lazy big block.
If the two vehicles have the same weight, the big block is going to cream the small block every time. If the big block car is heavier, there's a good chance it's still going to cream the small block.
Yeah, let's just say instead of revving it or shifting it past peak power, just shift it at peak power.
Right.
And it loses 1,500 RPM. What happens down here?
It
Which
falls
one
into
has
the-
more power down here?
Yeah.
Because you have to take that into account too. It's
Area under the
average
curve.
power. It's not just a peak number.
Yeah, well, I agree to an extent.
Okay. So you and I are going to say that the big block actually has better overall performance in drag racing. How about your average drive around street car or truck?
Well,
Big block.
If you're looking at a tugboat engine or a locomotive engine
Right.
or something like that, then all of that torque is important. The same thing with the heavy street car. I'd have to say that torque has an advantage in that kind of environment for sure.
Big block.
Yeah.
Heavy car, boat, it just fits way more applications.
High rear end gear.
Yeah.
It's more drivable. It has a smaller cam. The big block can take a lower stall speed converter, higher rear end gear, heavier car. It'll idle smoother. Everything about drivability and low end is better with the big block. Off camera 3 minutes ago, he was trying to figure out how to make his Suburban fast. Go ahead and throw that small block in there, Steve.
Oh, no, I wouldn't. Well, that's a big, heavy boat. I need torque.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, no question.
I'm going to hand you this one. Which engine wins for weight?
For weight? Oh, small block.
Small block. How about fitting in the car? Small block.
Oh, wow. Categories are favoring the small block now.
How about mileage?
Ooh.
I bet these both get the same gas mileage in truth. So overall, our win is going to have to go to the big block.
I don't see how it can't. I mean, you just look at this.
Yeah.
And that's the whole story.
Yep.
Whether it's in a boat, driving down the street, I mean, for me, it's just a big block.
But Steve, I mean, if you really want to hold to that logic, then what you're saying is always just build the biggest engine that you can. The most
What
cubic
other
inch is
logic
always
have I
the
ever
best.
gone by?
Right. There's no replacement for
Displacement.
There you go.
Okay, guys.
But also, I think this is a really interesting comparison because magazine cover blurb would say 500 horsepower in both cases, but the big block, cheaper to build, tamer to drive around, does way better burnouts, it's less high strung, it's going to be more reliable.
That big block's got a 230 at 50 camshaft. I think it's a flat tap it.
Right.
It's a $100 camshaft.
Right. Yeah, it's dinky. It has more manifold vacuum, I presume.
I'm sure it
With
does.
less cam and 100 cubic or 80 cubic inches, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all we really proved here is that more displacement makes more torque, and you can build a tamer engine that's easier to drive and make more power.
All right, you guys got me on this one. That's probably a pretty good combination. The big block 454.
Yeah, I think so.
It's my choice.
So I guess this is a pretty simple point, but our point is made. You can make the same horsepower with two different engines and come up with a completely different torque curve. Now I'm going to throw you for a curve, which is I would also like to look at the power curve of your favorite engine that we've ever done on the show, which is the Motorhome 440 with the stock heads and the turbo.
No, my engine's over there.
No.
It's the aluminum, all aluminum big block. That's my favorite engine.
No, I want to see the 500 horsepower bone stock 440. We wanted to have a cam intake, stock manifolds, turbo. I think it made right around 500 horsepower. Let's see what happens then. Okay, so now here's a 514 horsepower engine, 14 up, 16 up from what we're looking at with the other two engines, but it's making it with boost. Junk cylinder heads, a smoking garbage short block, garbage cylinder heads, a 50-year-old intake manifold design.
Right.
Nearly.
And factory log manifolds.
Factory log manifolds and a turbo. And I think at this point we're making about 9 pounds.
Yeah.
And so we made 644 pound-feet of torque and 514 horsepower. As compared to the big block that we just tested, you can see once again, horsepower up here is about the same, but the torque jumps up way big, even compared to the big block.
Knowing he loves Mopars, we have to ask, so now which one do you like?
Oh, the Turbo 440.
Of course.
What are you talking about, Steve-O? Look at the torque.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there we've given you 3 different combinations to look at. If you want 500 horsepower, that's not your only question. You want to look at what you're doing for the torque curve. You also want to look at price, reliability, how big the engine is in the car, whether you want to fabricate turbo stuff. It's all up to you, and now you know what the difference is in the overall power curve for 3 engines that make about the same horsepower.
Yeah.
Yep.
Still want the big block Chevy.
Still want the big block Chevy, and you'll see more of those, I guarantee it, on future episodes of Engine Masters. Steve just wants more big blocks. That's all that really comes down to. And I guarantee there will be more of those on future episodes of Engine Masters. Come on, Brule, get in on the action. Ready for this? Watch, we can make him do it.
Do I go that way?
No, you have to go this way.
Okay.
It's on future episodes of Engine Masters. See, he's trainable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Woohoo! For the first time ever on Engine Masters, we're going to be testing inline 6-cylinder power. But can we use boost to make muscle car levels of horsepower? Well, that's what we're going to find out. You asked for it, you got it. We are testing an inline 6. Now, everything we've done on Engine Masters so far has been V configuration engines, and this time it is an inliner, meaning the pistons are all lined up right in a row. Now, you might not really be familiar with this if you're like a later model performance enthusiast with LS engines and Coyotes and such, but if you're a Cummins guy or a Toyota 2J guy, those are also inline 6s. But you may not know that this configuration dates back to the dawn of time. And in the 40s through the early 80s, they were really the baseline engine for every standard mundane grocery getter. And of course, Chrysler had to jump into the fray. The Slant 6 engine, like this Mopar right here, was originally developed in 1958 and 59 for the big release of the Plymouth Valiant in 1960. And they made a big push with that. As a matter of fact, Hot Rod Magazine covered it a lot. And the engine itself was known back then by Mopar as the Valiant engine before people called it a Slant 6. Why is it called a Slant 6? Well, most inline engines have the pistons stood straight up like this, so the engine is rather tall. Now, for the design criteria of the Plymouth Valiant, they leaned this engine over 30 degrees, so it is a slant. As they call it, the leaning tower of power. Power? Well, kind of a misnomer, I think, but really performance was part of the package from the very beginning. As a matter of fact, they had a NASCAR Junior Racing League with these back at the very beginning, and it got dumped after a year because it was just so boring. Because honestly, the Valiants just kept winning, and that's part of what added to their lore. They made this engine from that 1960 Valiant all the way into 1987 in trucks. Now, Chrysler made these things in displacement of 170 cubic inches, which is a lower deck height, and then the high deck height family was 198 cubic inches, or the most popular of them, which was 225. Now, if you're a Mopar guy, you know the Slant 6 and you defend it to the death as being the most reliable, awesome inline 6 ever. They say when there's a nuclear holocaust, like it's going to happen in 2020, the only thing that's going to be left is roaches and Slant 6s. The thing I will say, though, is I believe the Slant 6 is vastly overrated. Yep, I said it out loud. However, I admit that Dulcich has put together a beautiful example. This thing looks rad. The thing is, he did it to try and exceed the horsepower of a 1968 or 1969 383 V8 Plymouth Roadrunner. Can he do it? Well, I present Mr. Steve Dulcich to tell you exactly what his plan is.
My Slant 6. Now, this engine came out of my 1968 Dodge Dart hardtop, and it served me really well for a whole number of years. I don't know how long, but the only thing is it was pretty worn out, it was very greasy, and maybe even slightly underpowered. Now, the engine was a remanufactured unit. It's not original to the car. In fact, the block is from 1984. And as an 84 block, it came with a cast crankshaft where all the earlier engines had superior forged crankshaft. But I was doing a basic rebuild on the short block. I used stock replacement style sealed power pistons, and I used factory rods along with the factory crankshaft. The only really trick thing in the block is the camshaft. It's a Howard's cam with 220 duration on the intake and the exhaust and 473 lift. Now, originally these engines were 145 horsepower in the Dart application, and the compression ratio was really low. And I bumped that up to about 10.5 to 1 from a factory 8.4 to 1 by decking the block and milling the heads. Now, the heads is where it really starts getting interesting because they are fully competition ported. They have oversized valves from SI. 1/700 intake, 144 exhaust. That's 80 thousandths bigger than stock, and that really helps the flow. On the other side of the head here, we've got a Clifford split header, and we have an Offenhauser 4-barrel manifold. A Holley Ultra XP carburetor is run when we have this thing naturally aspirated, but when we have this magnificent Torque Storm supercharger, we have a designated blow-through carburetor. This one is a quick fuel 750 BAN model. It's made for a blow-through application. So we're gonna run this naturally aspirated, then we're gonna see what it does with boost. Well, what are you gonna say about the Slant 6, Freiberger?
I was just mentally trying to think how many I've put into a dumpster.
I remember seeing you do it several times.
The whole key is to get it balanced right on the corner of the dumpster and disconnect your chain from the cherry picker.
I remember the sound distinctly, but and you know what? Those Slant 6s were probably better than this one because this is a late model Slant with a cast crank.
It doesn't matter. You don't need the forging.
Oh, no?
It's 75% of an engine, so I've reduced my expectations by 25%. But I must say, Dulcich, you did a fantastic job detailing this thing. It looks awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I only really set out to do a $500 overhaul, and I wanted it to look nice. So that was my thing. It was just a fun project for a driver, not a race engine.
You're the only guy I know that can make a Slant 6 look cool.
Oh, thank you, Steve-O. I consider that a compliment. I actually do think it looks cool.
Those are the ones we laughed at in high school.
Oh, I know.
That's when you knew he was driving his sister's car.
To be honest, I remember going to the junkyard and opening a hood on a car, and if I saw a Slant 6, it actually disgusted me. You know,
well,
back in the day.
Admits it. But when they run sweet, there's something nice about an inliner. It's just kind of cute, cool, quiet, you know, drives around. But then when you try and hop them up, I've never been impressed even once. Remember the Matt King Cuda?
Yeah.
Yeah, fail.
I remember it was 16 seconds, and it had a cam that barely drove on the street.
Exactly. So far we've established this engine is really worth nothing but comedy.
Well, it was fun for me. It's just a novelty. I just wanted that to go back in, and it's going back in better than I expected to do at first. Okay, well, let's fire this bad boy up and make some buzzing sounds.
All thundering 6 cylinders.
Blundering.
Yeah, blundering. It's cool, though. Okay.
All right, guys.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah.
Really?
That's a 200. It's a little engine.
Our power for our first pull with the Slant 6, 251 pound-feet of torque at 4,200 RPM and up at a big 4,900 RPM, made 215 horsepower, which, Steve, you will note, is not even 1 per cubic inch.
No, but I did some research on Slant 6 builds on the internet, and the best was a former co-worker of yours, Steve Magnante, in Hot Rod Magazine. He built a Slant 6 with some very, very big name guys, and the peak horsepower was 220, 222, something like that. And
Oh, so it was better than this.
yeah, by a little bit, but it had a much more racy intake manifold, and it had 20 degrees more camshaft. This is a very mild street cam, so I don't feel bad about that, given what you can expect from a Slant 6. I've seen a lot of Slant 6 builds under 200 horsepower.
If this was a V8 with the same camshaft and stock cylinder heads, it'd probably be doing a little better than 1 per cubic inch, yeah?
I'm sure I remember what camshaft was in it or how much duration there was.
This is 220 at 50.
Okay.
Yeah, so you-
Solid flat, so.
Throw that in a small block Chevy with stock heads, or with
Maybe
a
it's
350.
kind
Yeah,
of
you're right.
about the same.
It's
not
kind
too
of a
bad.
wobbler.
Yeah.
It tells me, though, that you really have to love the Slant 6 in order to hop it up, because you've got just as much money in this as you would in the 318, and it's making 100 less horsepower. Well, not 100.
Oh,
let's
easily 100.
say.
You can get 375
Yeah,
out of a very mild 318, or 400 even,
Yeah.
with stock-based parts. But this build wasn't about the horsepower. It was just a fun kind of project
Just
for
what
me.
I said. You got to love the Slant 6
Yeah.
in order to pour this kind of money into it, because it's not a powerhouse.
Anymore, there's something to be said about being unique.
Yeah.
Because everybody's done everything 100 times, but they haven't done this 100 times.
Yeah.
That's my first one, to be honest with you. I've never built a Slant 6 before this one.
And now you already want another one.
I do. I want to try going with a little more aggressive combination.
Okay, so I think performed as expected. So we got to go to the next step, is find out if we can turn it into that other 25% of an engine with boost.
Okay. Steve,
That always fixes it.
Don't blow up my Slant 6.
Oh, I'm not going to be blowing it up. You have to put the blower on first.
Then you'll take care of it. And
I will take care of it and be very cautious in caring.
okay, thank you.
So 215 horsepower. Now we're going to go see if we can step that up with Supercharger Boost. Torque Storm, here we come. Let's go.
For the Torque Storm Supercharger. We'll see a little torque step there.
The carburetor we're putting on here is a special one for blow-through applications. It's from QFT. It's a 750 CFM double pumper with annular boosters.
You think that's enough blow-through carburetor?
Way too much.
It's way overkill for this.
It is. They make the 600 or 650 ones too.
So what we have here is a centrifugal supercharger. This is built by a company called Torque Storm, and they provide you with the whole kit for a Slant 6. The mounting bracket for the supercharger itself, the pulleys that go on the engine, the tensioner, the blow-off valve, the whole 9 yards. The whole idea here is to add pressurized air into the engine, thus giving more horsepower. Now, we can vary the amount of pressurized air by varying the pulley size here. Right now, it's got the slowest pulley combination that I have for this blower. So that's gonna be the mildest setup, and we're gonna go into the dyno cell and see what it does right now.
And as simple as that, we are supercharged. Now, I know that you gapped the rings for boost, but it's still cast pistons, so I'm guessing that Steve wanted to pour some gnarlier fuel in the thing.
What we had Troy put in was 116 maximal. It's just a safety thing. I've never really seen a big difference in using less octane than more, you know, from a power standpoint. So for me, it's just be as safe as you can.
You always go right to the bottom of the page on the octane, I know.
Well, it's just a safer way to run the things. I mean, with a cast piston, it scares me a little bit, even though there's not a ton of boost, but it still does. But it's just a safe way to run.
So it's a Sunoco 116.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm safe with that.
So we got that Sunoco 116 in it, but I think we are also retarding the timing, right?
So it actually surprisingly only wanted 30 degrees total timing, normally aspirated. We did some timing sweeps, which tells me the combustion chamber is not horrible.
It's a really long stroke and a really small bore.
So that'll certainly affect it.
Yeah.
It's not a ton of boost, you know, it's not, well, we don't think it's going to be a ton of boost, but I'm thinking we pull it back 4 or 5 degrees. On any forced induction engine, the combustion is faster because it's a higher pressure. And so we don't have to start it as early. And so I'm thinking 25-ish would be probably appropriate for this thing, and we'll be safe there with the 116.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Everything is better with boost.
Let's find out how much better.
Okay.
So we have the Torque Storm installed. We've got the Sunoco 116 gas in the tank, and Steve just pulled back the timing a little bit. We're ready to make our first run with boost. Thing's like a buzzsaw.
I know.
Yeah, but it didn't quite make it, I don't think.
Well, not quite.
Of course, we're not fully all in yet.
No.
Yeah, we need to look at the boost and the air fuel and all that stuff. Well, of course, boost pushed up the horsepower and also the RPM at the power peaks. We're now making 315.7 pound-feet of torque at 4,500 RPM, and up at 5,400 RPM, we're looking at 308.5. It's just short of Dulcich's goal. He's trying to make more power than the 69 Roadrunner 3D3, which would be 335 horsepower.
Well, you know, the beautiful thing about blowers, they make more than one pulley.
Right.
I know.
Well, before we go there, let's have a look at what we got here. That's worth it.
I would say.
So for that power gain, this kit is $2,800, which seems like a lot, but that's a massive difference.
Yeah, you just turned the turd 6-cylinder into something that's really fun.
Yeah. Now we're looking at the boost that it took to make a little bit more than 300 horsepower out of our Slant 6, and 7.5 at peak at 5,500 RPM.
That's not even trying on good gas.
Yeah, no, that's nothing. So I think the obvious answer is
More boost?
right.
It's always the answer.
Okay. I think I can do that, Freiberger.
Well, we haven't hit Steve's goal yet, and so next we're gonna go put a smaller blower pulley on it for more boost. As a tech tip, I believe you always want to anti-seize the pulley to the shaft on these centrifugal blowers, otherwise they wobble a little and like weld themselves together. We just did a pulley change for more boost. In our initial step, when we were running 7.5 pounds of boost, we had it pulleyed with an 8 on the crank and a 4-incher on the blower, so that's 100% overdriven. And the internal step-up ratio in the Torque Storm Supercharger is 4.45 to 1. So we did the math, and that put the blower RPM at 44,500 RPM. Now that we've got a 3.5-inch pulley on the Supercharger, we're doing 128% overdriven. And so now we're spinning the blower closer to 50,000 RPM, which, as a guess, Brule and I think that puts the boost pressure map more in where it wants to be with greater efficiency for the impeller in this thing. We're not really sure. Torque Storm only makes this one model of blower, so it's sort of universal for any engine, but 5,000 RPM is gonna be a little bit lower than you would normally run it. I think on a V8 you would see that thing turning, you know, at least 6, maybe 65, which means even more blower speed. But you know what? That's why you have different pulleys, optimizing it for different engines. But now I think we're ready to go. He's gonna slam the belt on it and we're gonna run it.
Yeah, maybe.
Look at that.
That's beautiful. Oh man, look at that. Fits like a store-bought one. Now that we've got the smaller pulley on the blower, it should make more boost and more horsepower. We're gonna fire this thing up and find out. Oh, man.
We're not sure what just happened. We'll wait to see the actual data.
You want the good news or the bad news?
It had killer torque, but I'm braced for disappointment.
I think it made your number, but I think you're going to have an opportunity to buy those Weisco pistons you were talking about.
Oh, really?
earlier.
Oh, really?
I saw lots of smoke out the breather.
Ooh, I didn't notice that. Oh, it's still smoking out the breather.
Oh, what was the good news?
It made the number you wanted.
No, I saw the torque was coming in pretty hard, and the thing is, I couldn't stand it. I literally looked away. I couldn't watch.
So you actually think it hold a piston?
It's internal. I mean, I didn't hear anything horrible like a broken connecting rod or disintegrated piston, but it's got lots of smoke and oil out the breather. I'm thinking piston.
Well, it could have blown a head gasket, too.
It is possible cylinder pressure leaking into the combustion
such a
chamber.
bummer. I was looking at the power number. You were looking away.
I know, I couldn't take it because I couldn't stand it.
Well, let's see what kind of power it made anyway. Well, here's our power numbers with the perhaps wounded Slant 6. 341.3 pound-feet of torque at 4,800 RPM, and it made 328 horsepower at 5,500 RPM. But is it actually wounded? I guess, let's look at the boost. Was it absurd? I didn't notice.
No, it was like 12.
It made 10 and a half pounds of boost.
So
That's
it
not
wasn't a big
extreme.
jump.
I don't think it's broken.
As he says with ultimate confidence.
We better go find out for sure. Oh, this is not looking good. It's smoking a lot out of the breather, and we just cranked it over, and it's interesting. You hear it crank, yun, 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 poof, yun, 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 poof. Like there's one piston that's really smoking it.
The likelihood, it would be 1 in 6 that it would be the last one that we checked that's destroyed. It's impossible. The odds are just not there.
I'll go get the compression gauge.
Oh,
it's
this
that
is
one.
oily.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy is oily.
Got a lot of oil
but
on it.
you know what? He's not showing any pieces of piston.
Steve, when we pulled out our spark plugs, we found that one of them has a ton of oil on it, which is bad news. And so we're going to proceed with a compression check to see if that hole is dead or not.
I'm not even going to look. Freiberger. No compression there.
Loser. That's unfortunate. So that means probably a piston. He thinks it killed a head gasket. I don't see how that puts oil all over it.
That was my suspicion.
We determined that the piston in number 5 is junk. Are you taking that off? You have chunks?
What is that? It's a blown head gasket, Steve.
What, you see it?
Yeah, right here.
Well, that's the best possible answer. Yeah, so this is the best possible news. It actually blew a head gasket, and the reason it did not show on the other 2 cylinders is because it blew straight out this way, which on the Slant 6 goes right into the crankcase. So, and there's no water there either. No. So that's an easy fix. Good. It lived to fight another day.
Boom.
The bro shake. Well, our failure point was way better than expected, or better news. This is a Slant 6 head gasket, just like the one Dulcich used, and it blew out right there, which goes right into the crankcase. What's the story?
You know what, Freiberger, I actually agonized over the head gasket when I was putting that together, because the directions on this, and this is a stock replacement head gasket, nothing special. It doesn't have the wire reinforced fire ring, which would help seal compression. And there's only 4 fasteners per cylinder on the Slant 6, and they're puny 7/16 bolts, so not very good clamping. And I was going to use a little bit of secret sauce on it and do a little bit of this and that, and then, you know, it was late at night, and it says use no sealer right on the gasket.
So it swayed you?
I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna slap it on there, and I brought the extra oil with me just in case, even though we don't have time to swap it or all the right stuff. It wasn't a big shocker to be honest with you.
Well, you did call it. I mean, we were worried about the piston and everything. He said head gasket right away.
I'm never that lucky. So
yeah.
That's why I said piston.
Right. So that's really good. I guess that is the good news and the bad news, is that it's broken, but it's not that bad. Of course, the other bad news is it didn't quite make the power you wanted. But then we come back to more good news. 3 more pounds of boost did that. The red lines are when we had 7.5 pounds in it. The black lines are when we had 10.5 pounds at peak. So actually made a significant difference.
It's hard to say. I mean, the head gasket might have started, seeping a little bit of compression juice.
Like right here?
Yeah, 4,900 or so, because if you look at that curve, it starts converging back in towards the other one. So I'm going to rest my laurels on that. And also, I did a little bit of research, and, my bogey was the 383 Dart, because that engine goes in my 68 Dart, and in 68, the top engine option was the 383 with 300 horsepower only.
Only 300?
And 280 in the 67 380 Dart.
Really?
383 Dart, yeah.
Because they had that crimped down exhaust manifold on the left side.
That's exactly what it was. But
so your bogey was not the 335 Roadrunner motor.
I think
it was the 300 horse Dart engine, and you got that by 328. So in the end, a broken engine, but an easy repair, 328 horsepower, squeaking by Dulcich's bogus standards for his goal, which is kind of what we do every single time on Engine Masters. Have you ever built a Slant 6?
I'm not sure if you could call it building it. I took the pistons out and ridge reamed it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I couldn't get the pistons out. And I wasn't all that familiar with ridge reamers at that point. I was still in high school, so it might have been just a little overboard on the top quarter inch, maybe the 100,000s. I kept it high enough where the rings didn't pass it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was bigger. I just call it port relieving the cylinder walls.
Yeah, your crevice volume was...
The guy I worked for at the Conoco gas station at the time was not impressed at all.
You've seen blower cams marketed forever, but do they really make you more of a baller with boost? Well, brace yourself for the facts, baby. On Engine Masters, we love challenging long-held beliefs about performance stuff. And one of those beliefs is that the market just has these special camshafts that are magical just for supercharged applications. They call them blower cams. You can find them in the catalog. And we're going to find out on this episode if they really make a difference or not. And we're going to do that by running this engine blown and unblown with a regular camshaft and with a so-called blower camshaft. I'll get into the specifics of those specs later on. But first, I'm really excited to tell you about a new member of the Engine Masters family. This is a 363 cubic inch small block Ford Windsor that is based on like Ford 302 architecture. Our short block is straight from Dart Machinery. They sell these things complete, all assembled, and they're killer. Forged pistons, good rods, forged crank, and the Dart SHP block that allows for a bigger bore than you could get from the factory on like a 302 Ford. The bore is 4.125 inches. The stroke is 3.4 inches. So put that all in that 8200 deck height and you get a little tiny powerhouse of 363 cubic inches. So that's the short block that we're working with here. And we're gonna configure it a whole bunch of ways in future episodes, but let's talk about what we're doing here. First of all, our supercharged combination is going to be stuffed by a ProCharger F1A 94 centrifugal blower that is going to make big power. Obviously, when we run it naturally aspirated, it's not going to have that supercharger. There's another difference blown for unblown, which is that we've got a Demon blow-through carburetor on it for the blower, and when we run it naturally aspirated, it's going to have a 750 CFM regular Holley XP. Everything else will remain the same throughout the test with the exception of the camshaft. So the intake manifold is going to be an Edelbrock single plane. It's a Super Victor 8.2. The cylinder heads are Airflow Research 165cc inlet runner. The compression ratio on this thing with these heads is going to be about 10.2 to 1. And as you can see, we've got the bottom end all filled out with some really nice oil pan stuff from Moroso. The headers are 1 3/4 inches. Now let's talk about the camshaft part of the program. And to do that, I want to sort of loosely define what would be considered a street cam versus a, quote, blower cam. And in doing that, I'm going to use specs that are typical of a comp cam's camshaft. It might be a little bit different on things like typical lobe separation angle for other manufacturers, but let's face it, nobody sells more camshafts than comp, and so they are kind of the standard from which to judge. They're also the brand that we're using here today and the company that helped us sort of sort through all of this. So what would be a typical comp cam's street strip camshaft? Let's say they have a lobe separation angle of 110 degrees. That's very common for them. What is lobe separation angle? Assume that's an exhaust lobe and this is an intake lobe, and the angle between the two is ground into the camshaft. The other thing about a typical split pattern cam from comp is that there's about a 6-degree difference between the duration of the intake lobe and the exhaust lobe. The exhaust lobe is almost always bigger. So for example, like a solid roller cam I recently ran in the COVID 350 was 242 degrees on the intake and 248 on the exhaust. So that split is about 6 degrees. Now let's get into what you would typically call a blower camshaft. There's some things people think of when they think blower camshaft, and the very first one is a wider lobe separation angle. Once again, if you've got your exhaust lobe and your intake lobe, and let's call that 110 degrees, they're going to widen it out to 114. We'll get more into that in a minute. The other signature of a blower cam is going to be more exhaust duration, more of a split. So remember I talked about that difference between 242 and 248 for a street cam? That's a 6-degree split between intake and exhaust. And what you might see on a blower cam is more like a 10 to 14 degree split. So what are the thoughts behind this? Well, for the larger duration on the exhaust lobe, the thought is that the supercharger is cramming more air into the engine and therefore making more power, and so you're going to have a lot more exhaust gases, and so the longer duration on the exhaust lobe is keeping that valve open longer, giving more of an opportunity to get all of those exhaust fumes back out of the engine in a way that might not be required so much with a naturally aspirated engine. So that's the thought on greater duration. What's the thought on lobe separation angle? And this is tricky. If you go back to an episode of Engine Masters that we did while we were testing various lobe separation angles, it's a little bit different than what you see with a blower cam. Try and visualize this. Once again, exhaust lobe, intake lobe, and there is a center line right between the two. There are multiple ways that you can change lobe separation angle. In our previous test, we took both lobes and moved them away from a center line when we were widening up that separation angle. But you don't have to do it that way. And what the blower cams do is actually just move the exhaust lobe. So in this case, we are going to leave our intake lobe exactly where it is, and all we're going to do is advance that exhaust lobe by 3 degrees. So just the exhaust lobe is moving. So think of our blower cam test this way. The only thing that we are really testing here is the exhaust valve opening point happening much earlier. And then because the duration of the exhaust lobe is bigger, even the exhaust closing point is the same as it is on the naturally aspirated cam. So we're only testing that exhaust opening point and the longer duration of the exhaust side. That's the best way to look at this. The intake lobe is the same. The intake lobe is degreed in relation to the piston in the same place. All we're checking here for the blower is opening that exhaust valve earlier and keeping the exhaust valve open longer to get all that air out. Simple enough? Well, even if you don't get it, you're going to see the results here, because what we've got are cams that are very typical of the specs I've been telling you for a street cam and a blower cam. And so let's get into those specs right now. Both of these camshafts are a design that you can put either a solid roller or a hydraulic roller on, strangely enough. Because you know us, you can guess that we've got solid roller lifters on both of these comp cams camshafts. The street cam has got duration on the intake of 244 and on the exhaust of 250. There's that 6-degree split that I told you about. And it's on a 110-degree lobe separation angle. Like I told you, typical street unit. Now the blower cam has a much bigger split. It's got that same 244 intake lobe, it's the same lobe, but it's got 258 on the exhaust, a big split there. And it's on a 113-degree lobe separation angle. If you care about lift, all of these lobes have right around 600 lift. It's like 603 to 605. And so this is gonna be really interesting. We've got a typical street cam, we've got a typical blower cam, and I'm gonna talk it out with the dudes, and then we're gonna hang our fresh 363 on the dyno and find out if any of this gobbledygook actually matters. Okay, guys, I love episodes like this because we're either gonna myth bust or we're gonna prove that the long-held, bench racing story about the blower cam is true.
I mean, do you have any preconceived notions about the blower cam?
I've learned not to state my preconceived notions out loud, so even if I have them, I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
He's always had a preconceived notion.
That's right, I've just learned not to speak them.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I don't honestly recall ever having done this test back-to-back, so this is gonna be really good. I'm leaning towards maybe it not being magic because it's a blower cam. But that's why we're here.
Yeah, we'll find out. The data will prove it. Here's the one thing I really want to ask for the sake of the audience, though, is that the camshafts like this, or not like this is a naturally aspirated cam, but the blower cams that you see advertised very often are also stated that they're for nitrous. And my belief is that what we're testing here today cannot be extrapolated into whether this cam will work on nitrous or not. This is just a test for boost.
I don't think added cylinder pressure becomes a universal camshaft where you automatically add something or take something away just because it has more cylinder pressure. Compression ratio has more cylinder pressure.
Right.
And we don't change camshafts for added compression ratio necessarily. So I think it pertains just to the blowers.
Right, because I think it's all about the blower and how it's actually pushing. Nitrous doesn't push air and fuel through the engine, a blower does.
Well, I mean, nitrous may or may not need a different camshaft, but we're testing blowers,
Yeah,
and you
that's
just
it.
can't make that leap and say, oh, that applies to all these other things we're not testing here.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you also cannot extrapolate this for turbocharging. Once again, totally different game.
I think we've all learned not to presume or make assumptions.
Yes.
It's caught us
That's
too
the
many
one thing
times.
Engine Masters has done for us. So I just wanted to make that point really clearly for the audience, is that this is all about boost. I think it's fair to say that it works either centrifugal or roots supercharged, but it doesn't apply to nitrous, doesn't apply to turbocharging.
I agree.
Okay, so we're all in agreement. Perfect. Good way to start the day. Steve's gonna go fire this thing up right now. Our Ford 363 is naturally aspirated with the baseline regular guy camshaft.
On my way.
Go for it. Man, that's the first time I've seen the 363 in person. I like it.
I wanted to surprise you. I got to run it before, obviously, and it's really fun. It goes to 7,200 RPM, and there's more left. I mean, it'll rev higher if it were in a car and you wanted to shift later.
Right.
You know, every time we've used the start stuff, the Gladiator, 5,000 pulls on it. Very similar combination.
That's why I wanted
Very
that short
similar
block.
power. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
exactly.
And it sounded great going up there, too.
Dulcich loves the RPM.
Yeah. Even he's jealous, huh?
I know. I think it's 10 horsepower down from what I had expected from it, but it's still pretty good. Let's have a look. There's the power numbers for our stout little Ford. It made 439 pound-feet of torque at 5,300 RPM and 514 horsepower at 6,900 RPM. So there's our baseline numbers, but let me bench race just a little bit with you guys. We've been super impressed with the AFR 165 Ford head before, But in those other engines that we've run it on, a 351 and a 410, I've had much smaller cams. So do you agree with me? The 195 would actually make more power on this particular combo.
I think it probably would. Maybe not
Yeah.
a lot, but this thing would drive great on the street because it's a little smaller port.
Yeah.
As far as a peak number, I think you're right. I think if it had the 195, we're probably looking at another 10 or something.
It's just I've spent so many episodes going, man, this 165 is amazing, just buy it. I think this is a case where the 195, especially with the blower, would probably behoove you.
Yeah, the blower kind of allows for a bigger cylinder head, but I think you were right every time you said that this 165 is an amazing little head.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's super good. And now we get to go put the supercharger on this combo.
All right.
Ready for that?
Sure.
More than ready.
We're gonna go install our Pro Charger, and this is really gonna get good. So we're changing the carburetor over to our blow-through Demon in order to prep for our Pro Charger. It's just calibrated differently, flows more fuel. It can handle the pressure and the airflow going through it in a different way than a regular carburetor. The blower we're installing here is a Procharger F1A94, capable of 1,200 horsepower, but we're not gonna make that much here. This out of here.
Gonna go to
To this one. We use zip ties as hose clamps to hold the little boost lines on, and it seems to work. So what Troy's doing here is disconnecting the carburetor lines, and we'll turn on the electric fuel pump and just pump all the fuel out of the system. We'll run the engine a little bit to get the fuel out of the bowls, and then we're ready to go with our Sunoco 116. All right, as soon as I hook up these fuel lines, we will be almost done. We've got our Procharger F1A94 on there. That thing is capable of more than 1,000 horsepower. As a matter of fact, I think we made almost 1,100 with it on my 347 Chevy. We've got it tuned down here. I don't know what this thing is gonna make. That's gonna be part of the fun. But since it is supercharged, I'm gonna be using the AMSOIL Dominator. You might not even be aware that because we haven't done the oil pour in a long time, AMSOIL is back as the title sponsor of Engine Masters, which is super cool. And when we run blown stuff, they like us to run the Dominator racing oil. AMSOIL, by the way, is the first synthetic oil, at least for hot rod and public consumption. Now we got a baseline we can live with.
something we can live with.
Yeah, let's have a look. Our new power numbers are 715 horsepower up at 7,000 RPM, and we're making 590 pound-feet of torque. Now we've got our baseline naturally aspirated and boosted with our so-called naturally aspirated regular camshaft. It's time to go install the blower cam. Ready?
It's gonna make more horsepower.
Let's hope so. All right, Troy. Here's the thing about the 8.2 deck height small block Ford Windsor, meaning like a 260, 289, or a 302, or any of these stroker combos. You cannot get a roller lifter out of the block with a cylinder head installed. So we got to pull all the lifters up off the camshaft in order to get them out. And so Dulcich just came up with the genius idea of the wadded up shop towel to do that. Out with the normal cam, in with the blower cam. They look the same, but will they perform differently?
The key for me is to look right through the bolt hole and to hold it perfectly square and level. There we go.
Good. Blower cam installed. We're running it naturally aspirated now. We've got our regular carburetor back on the thing. We're ready to go look at what the power curves are gonna do. With our blower cam installed, our new peak power numbers are 436 pound-feet of torque at 5,300 RPM, and all the way up at 7,100 RPM, we've got 519.7 horsepower. But that's not important right now. The whole story is going to be in comparing the blower cam curve to the regular cam curve.
Interesting.
The black cam on here is going to be the blower cam. The red lines represent the what we would call naturally aspirated or regular cam, and it looks to me like it did kind of what we expected when we did that test on lobe separation angle before, is that the wider lobe separation angle with more exhaust duration ends up favoring high RPM, but giving away torque at low RPM.
You know, we were talking earlier, and these, quote, blower cams are not that much different than some drag race grinds that have a lot more exhaust duration, wider lobe separation, and, you know, it's fairly similar, and we've seen these results before.
Because it favors higher RPM?
Yes.
But why?
So what we're looking at, as far as the way the camshaft is ground and installed, the intake is in exactly the same place as far as intake closing and intake opening events, right? So all of the changes on the exhaust stroke. And the events happen earlier, it opens earlier and closes earlier. But does it close earlier? Not necessarily, because it's a larger lobe. So the closing point on the exhaust is pretty close.
Right.
So it's within half a degree as far as exhaust closing. So what's really happening is the exhaust valve is opening sooner. And it's opening at a higher pressure state in the cylinder. It'll impart more energy into the exhaust pipe, and it'll give you more of a draw when the reflective pressure wave moves up the primary tube and helps with the overlap scavenging.
So what you're saying is that the exhaust valve opens in the power stroke. So therefore, if it opens earlier, there's still more cylinder pressure when it opens. So there's more sort of like bang, getting it like moved out the exhaust.
Yeah, I mean, the term we would use for that is blow down. You're blowing it down earlier. And
I use bang.
Well, bang's pretty good too. But I mean, that's what I really think is going on. Overlap scavenging is going to be improved up top, and you know, we see a little bit of gain in power.
But here's what's interesting to me about this whole thing, comparing it to the episode that we did on lobe separation angle, where we took both the lobes and moved them both out from the center line, whereas in this case, we're looking at no changes on the intake.
Right.
Basically the same overlap within maybe half a degree, and all the big changes happening in the exhaust. Yet it's tilting the curve in the same way. Or, actually, you know what? I'm wrong. When we did the lobe separation angle test before, it gave up power everywhere, and the crossover was way up here.
Way up there, yeah.
The crossover here is further down than what we saw in our prior test. But that's also because on that other test, I think we went from like greater extremes.
Well, that's true, and also you're looking at the intake closing is going to affect trapping efficiency because you're having a later intake closing with that scenario that you just described in our lobe
by
separation
moving both
test.
lobes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Huh.
Interesting, though, isn't it?
Yeah. You know what else? You were also talking about how I was asking about how what's really more important to power. Is it the so-called dynamic compression ratio, which is the compression ratio calculated from the intake closing point, or is what's more important the exhaust opening point and that blowdown of losing cylinder pressure on the power stroke? But your point is, at the bottom of that power stroke, the rod's swiping on a very ineffective area of the crankshaft.
Yeah, you're at a very poor rod angle as far as imparting torque onto the crankshaft, plus you've had a lot of pressure decay because of the expansion ratio from almost at TDC, where you have a very small volume, to almost bottom dead center, where, boom, you've used a lot of your effective pressure up.
So to go back to his time argument, which I also agree with, so how do you explain how it makes more bottom-end torque with the narrower lobe separation if it's ineffective at that point in the... If the exhaust opening is ineffective at the bottom of the power stroke?
Yeah, I was considering that, and it's not something that I just...
Oh, come on!
I really don't have it, Freiberger. I mean...
You want to try?
It might be the time thing. I don't know.
It's apparent to me that this is not the easiest subject to make clear when we're discussing it.
But I think to clarify and narrow it down, this is a trend we typically see based on the change that we just saw. So what we need to find out is, does that make this a blower cam? And what's your definition of success on blower cam? Does it mean that the comparison of naturally aspirated to boost with the NA cam makes less power than the comparison of naturally aspirated to boost with the blower cam. In other words, if we gained, what would it be, roughly 200 horsepower with the NA cam, will this gain 220? Or will it gain the same amount and just tilt the curve in a different way?
I think we're going to see kind of the same thing happen with the blower as we are normally aspirated, kind of the same trends.
Improvement up top and a loss in torque right in the same area.
I mean, if we're going to qualify a, quote, blower cam as a winner, I think it has to make more power everywhere than the NA cam. That makes it a winner.
It?
No, I don't think it does. I think it does the same thing as this.
No, you're saying to qualify as a winner, it has to make more power everywhere.
Yeah.
The plot thickens. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's my take on it.
That's your take on it?
Because nobody, who said that you want all top end? Maybe you want more bottom end. Maybe you want more top end. You know, so that I think it does the same thing supercharged as normally aspirated.
This is a fantastic argument to have as soon as we actually have data.
I know, I'd like to see it.
So what we're going to do next is run in the dyno cell and put our ProCharger back on the 363, and then there'll be less guessing and more knowing.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what it does.
Point taken.
Let's go. All right, we decided it's the blower cam. So why are we even doing the episode? You just get the blower cam. It makes more power.
That's what you need is the blower cam.
Yeah.
When you got a blower, for crying out loud.
Data me. Por favor. You know I'm obligated to give you the power peaks, even though you know the whole story is in the curves. Now we're making 592.5 pound-feet of torque and a peak of 729 horsepower under boost. But, like I always say, the whole story is in the overlay.
It is.
The way I worked that into sort of a rhyme.
Oh, yeah.
I could be the new horsepower rapper.
If you could just hold a tune, yeah.
Right. There you go. Tells you what it tells you, doesn't it? So the red lines right here are with the naturally aspirated cam. The black lines are with the blower cam. And what you'll observe is the trend is exactly what we saw when it was naturally aspirated. Meaning specifically that the so-called regular cam with 110-degree lobe separation angle makes more torque and power all the way up to the crossover at 5252, which is 5,252 RPM. And then above that, the so-called blower cam with the 113-degree lobe separation angle pulls ahead. So the question is it a blower cam?
It's a cam.
It's a cam.
I call it a blower cam.
Why?
Well, look, it made more power with the blower.
It made more power naturally aspirated.
So it must be a naturally aspirated cam.
Right.
Or a blower cam.
Or a blower cam. So I got to go back to the Richard Holdner thing. He's made this famous, actually, which is all cams are blower cams, which means, I think, in this literal example, that you pick the shape of the curve that you want naturally aspirated, and the same thing happens with boost.
Well, I'm going to take the opposite position of that and say all cams are NA cams.
They are. All cams are NA cams, too. It's just you pick what you want them to do.
Our blower cam is the same camshaft we picked for drag race stuff with wide lobe set, more exhaust, and all of that. So,
well, if you want to reduce it all down, then you could just say all cams are cams, right?
All cams are cams.
That may be the ultimate answer.
They
right
might
there.
be nitrous cams, too. I think what we've seen over and over is that the shape of the curve and how it affects performance is what the camshaft's going to do, regardless of if it's naturally aspirated or boosted, right?
I don't see this really as being any different than any other cam test where you choose the cam based on where and what you want the engine to do.
Yeah.
My takeaway is the cams, the two different cams did the same thing, whether it was normally aspirated or blown. You're seeing the same tilt of the curve, so
Yep.
it's the cam and the engine combination. Maybe it doesn't really care that much that it's a blower cam?
If I was drag racing, I would have picked the so-called blower cam even for naturally aspirated trim.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're running the thing from 6 to 7,500, that's the camshaft.
Yeah.
If you're running the thing from 3,500 to 5,000, then the NA cam is the camshaft, whether it's NA or blown.
Can we call up the two naturally aspirated curves just so that we can have some look at...
Separate from this or blown?
No, let's add it so
Okay.
that we can compare the shapes of them. Because I think what we're going to see is they diverge at the top as the boost increases, but I just want to have a look at that. Because the other thing that this is going to demonstrate is that whether it's blown or naturally aspirated, the effect on the curves is the same. In other words, the blower cam doesn't magically all of a sudden outperform the regular cam in every way just because it's under boost. So the last thing that we're looking at here is a screen that has got 2 or 4 complete tests here. At the top half, everything under boost, regular cam and blower cam. At the bottom, everything naturally aspirated, and in this case, red is the blower cam, green is the regular cam. You can see that the shapes of the curves are the same, although I'm seeing a greater difference here than I am here. So what I'm seeing in these two graphs in summary is that the trend of the camshaft naturally aspirated is the same trend as the camshaft with the blower on it. Once again, the blower cam is not magically making another 30 horsepower than the regular cam once it's under boost. And I think that's the impression a lot of people have.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, gents, get to the point.
The takeaway?
Final conclusion.
Brule.
Brule.
Takeaway.
They do the same thing, NA as they do blown.
Yep. Cams are cams.
Cams are cams.
And here's the ultimate thing, which I know that you know, so I will let you speak it from my brain.
Oh, no. Oh, man. I wouldn't change cam for that much difference, really, when I could just add, what, 3/4 of a pound of boost? And he
Exactly.
clips all of those differences?
Right, if you care about the tilting of the curve, big deal. You're like, ooh, I don't make enough horsepower, let me put another pound in it. Guess what? It's gonna bring this one up to here anyway. Boost is boost.
Cams are cams.
It just doesn't matter. So still, I learned something here, which is cams are cams, but I think we also learned that boost, just keep cranking it up and you make more power. More power. That's what we do every single time on Engine Masters. See, I'm not taking any advice from you on the silicone because you do the dab technique.
That's bad.
You
That's
can't
like-
have the dab technique.
So, David, when you actually drop that intake manifold on, you want it in the right position 4.5 so you don't kick the
Slide it.
silicone,
Thanks,
you know, from out of position.
Okay.
Yeah, so it just captures that silicone.
Do you want?
Hey,
Oh, Brule just put his hand right into your silicone job.
Hello. Xin chào tất cả các tiếng yêu nha. Lại là mình đây, lại dành video hay cho các bạn xem. Các bạn yêu, các bạn thấy hay thì hãy like, còn một nút kênh của mình thấy hay nha. Ok, thank you các bạn rất nhiều. Thank you.
Once upon a time, in a small... Once upon a time, in a... person who planted the tree. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled on the slopes of
Cái túi đen của tao đâu?
Once upon a time, in a small village
Sạc ở dưới nhà. Vâng. Đấy cái ông khứa. Áp như cái cổng kia anh rồi.
Hả?
Em áp rồi.
Chứ nó kháng thử không có được.
Như là nó cổng thôi. Nếu mà không nghe thì chưa nhưng mà anh hiểu là bên cho không nhựa đâu, chỉ muốn châu Á thì không nhựa thôi, không hạt đâu, dựa vậy thôi. Những cái đầu nhựa lên rồi như kiểu bên châu Á thì họ là châu nó không nhựa đâu, châu Á mình cần nhựa không chứ vừa xây dựng anh đặt rồi.
Châu nó không uống rượu. Châu chỉ uống rượu. Đó, Châu chỉ uống rượu. Đâu chỉ uống rượu. Châu làm gì cũng 12 tát không rượu đâu anh. À nó không dùng một con giáp không xịt. Nó cũng uống rượu thì pin được.
Hi 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 ha ha hi ha ha. Hả? Sao nữa? Sao? Làm chia cháo. Nay anh mời thì uống.
Ăn được hơi lâu rồi đấy.
Cái gì?
Ăn được hơi lâu rồi đấy.
Cái gì? Cái gì ăn?
Không nhớ, em vẫn nói rồi. Không có.
Mày nói anh chả hiểu cái điều gì.
Anh ăn được hơi lâu rồi. Ăn được hơi lâu rồi. Ăn được hơi lâu rồi.
Mẹ tát rồi. Mày
Em rồi nói rõ rồi anh thì
mày còn nói ngọng mà. Bố mày có đẻ ra mày ngọng thôi, mày còn định nói ngọng mà. Hả?
thì em đã nói ngái đi rồi.
Ngái phân lão tuyệt vả từ giờ.
Nhưng lâu lắm anh phải nộp thôi.
Mẹ mày tao nộp mít thế rồi mà không nộp. Mẹ mày hỏi thằng Chiến là tao nó đang nợ tiền nó đấy.
Tối hôm qua mới nộp xong đi.
Ê, hôm nọ em không chuẩn ngát còn nợ đưa cho tôi. Không, hôm qua em hội bet. Chứ hôm nọ em hội bet chuyển giá thằng Chiến đâu. Mẹ lão thật. Ngọng níu ngọng ngô nữa. Right. Tuấn hôm qua bảo mấy nay em phát mít.
Có lời khác nhiều.
Có đến đâu.
Hôm qua Tuấn bảo là mấy nay em phát mít anh ạ.
Con này lên cơ rồi. Hay rồi. Mày không nhắc đi nhắc lại. Khi lừa đảo thật. Nên thường xuyên nó nhắc. Nhớ lại nhé. Nhưng mà bình thường để hỏi bên kia.
Vì câu chuyện mình cọc nó luôn đặt 17-18 triệu nhưng cho tự nhiên nữa. Không thể cãi được. Và cọc 1-2 triệu nhưng mà mình cọc
Chắc kèo phí.
Việt Nam đáng nhau. Công Việt Nam. Việt theo.
Thuê nước ngoài rồi đấy.
Giờ toàn nước ngoài. Toàn
Đây này.
vâng.
Ít mẹ Nam thằng đá thì 4 thằng Tây, 1 thằng Việt Nam.
Toàn tốc phân. Này, cái này đã đấm đấy.
Đấy. À nó ở ghế nó ngủ rồi.
Vào ghế. Vừa nay xuống không có. Ra nó là.
Gọi dạy mấy anh uống không uống dạy em làm đi.
Vàng lại thấy lên.
Lên mạnh.
Dạ. Anh Chi bảo cái gì?
Nó lên mạnh lắm.
Thấy lên gần 15 rồi. 14 9 mấy.
Thấy chứng khoán này cái gì đồng mới nó lao lên ác luôn.
Ăn nó dày.
Nó mang lên trên đấy đủ bây giờ. Đây là vô cùng. Nhiều như cái không học mình nhỉ. Chỉ
bởi vì mình xem cái điện thoại tôi không tải cái này là cái điểm này mà cũng có lúc là trong hội trường trong mang điện thoại vào đấy báo cáo con nhé, tôi ghi tất cả những ngày tôi cần làm viết ở trong này đấy.
Biết ngoài thế nào trong ác mình đã thấy chi tiết rồi. Xin chào, hẹn gặp lại các bạn. Mình xin kết thúc video tại đây. Cảm ơn các bạn đã theo dõi kênh của mình. Ok, thank you nhá.